Yeah, so I just started the recording. Today we're gonna try to have some kind of discussion. I don't want to say debate. I don't want to say interview or anything regarding to the OIG, because it will be hard to give everyone equal amount of time and everything. We will raise topics and I will try to encourage people to speak, but this is a public forum. We are 21 people in here. Most time hopefully goes towards either me, the moderator. I will sometimes maybe tell someone to cut it short or try to end their point, or we will try to focus on the candidates, but anyone can anytime raise their hand for a question or try to not interrupt each other. It's better to use the function to just raise your hand, and we can try to keep track of that. If anyone has a question, you can also write in the chat, and we will try to catch that as well. So yeah, I don't know. Do we have anything else we should start with before we get going with the OIG stuff today, the election?
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, sure.
This whole thing is it's a bit I just want to say it's a bit interesting, just because every 18 months, well, I guess every 6 months, there's like a new OIG, right? So a lot of times the same OIG reapplies, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you know. And if people are happy with Janice, people are happy with Raikkonen, then just vote him back in, you know. It's a bit weird having to, I don't know, he has to dance for his job every 18 months. Like, that's crazy, right? And then if I don't know, like, let's say I get voted for OIG, and then in 18 months, am I gonna have to dance for my job, you know? So it's a bit awkward, right? If he's doing a good job, vote him back in, right? We don't have to do this whole dance, right? Let the man sleep. Let him sleep at night. Let me sleep at night too. I have to wake up at 5:30 for this, so.
So very early for you. Yeah, at least I will respond to one thing today. At least they went from 6 months to 18 months for the elected period. Because it wasn't like, it takes a little bit to get going, understand everything, get into routines, and then you have to redo everything again. So I think this is, I don't know if there is a perfect system, but yeah, it's rough, but it's also, the OIG, the IG is a service to the chain and the community, and that should not be forgotten. So they should be able to be replaced, even though those replacing it are the big token holders, which is a discussion that we will not go into today. It's not today. We're gonna talk about the OIG, not about the voting process. Stefan has a question as well.
Yeah, hey, I'm Steph, one of block producers with the EOS Nation. If everyone could kind of introduce themselves before they ask a question or talk. I'm seeing a couple of unfamiliar faces. I'm sure others will be listening to this call as well that may want to get some additional context. Quick note on the comments from Cass. I do think it's fine if people vote, apply for the position again. I have no problems re-electing people if they do a good job. I've got no problems with that. I will expect them to dance every 18 months though, and I don't think that's too much to ask. And the first time you go through the process, it's probably a lot more time consuming than when you kind of repeat the process anyways. So those are kind of my two comments I wanted to share here. And yeah, good luck to everyone, and I'm looking forward to learning more about our candidates.
Yeah, that's good. Let's jump into Cass, because introduction was the next thing, so that's great. Cass was just speaking, so why don't you take a short introduction of who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Kaz. I go under the account under the pseudonym T-Break, and I've been building here since late 2021. I'm a smart contract developer. That's definitely by far, my most viable skill set. I do front end development, do graphics programming, game design. The Terraformers project, I'm basically running the whole thing by myself right now, with the support of the Terraformers community, of course. The reason I think, I think I have the skill set to be an OIG, right? But I think there's a lot more that goes to being an OIG member, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that today. If I don't win, like, I'm totally fine with that. I got a great thing going for me. I think the worst thing would be like Janice getting replaced by someone who might not be doing as good of a job as them, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And I will just hit one question before I move forward. You're aware that the OIG position is a full-time position for 1.5 years? Yeah, good. I just want to, so everyone is clear on that. And then let's since I see Mana above me on my screen, let's hit him after.
Hey guys, so like most of you know me by the name Mana, but like my real name is Manas Goyal. So like there would be a discrepancy in case you guys are confused. I'm based out of India. If I talk about like my background, I have worked with like multiple startups as the like in all these startups, I was the founding engineer. So I led the whole tech backbone. One of the startup is techguru.com. It's a order book style text. So you have order matching right on base blockchain. Order book style bet. I wrote the whole matching algorithms on the back and like the whole backend, right? Apart from that, I also am the founding engineer, like was founding engineer 0xPass, where I built a programmable MPC, which basically like lets you write custom logic into your wallets. For example, if ETH price goes above 3,000, only then sign the transaction, or you can embed any custom JS logic in a secure fashion. 0xPass was is launching next month on mainnet, and we already have like raised funding from Balaji Srinivasan, who's a like very good like pro crypto investor, famous in US. Specifically to Wax, I started my journey in Wax in 2020 with obviously Alien World, right? Half of I think Wax is onboarded through there, but I built NFT Stronkers out of it, where like the idea was to create fractionalized shares of NFTs when the NFT hype was big, and then people couldn't get into different games. That was highly successful, but obviously lesson learned that it doesn't work sustainably in the long term.
I have a question that I will cut you off here. Since you are running a lot of projects and doing a lot of things, do you have the time and capacity to also dig into the OIG?
Yes. So NFT Stronkers, and even at this moment, NFT Stronkers and WaxP tools are completely maintained fully by my team. So when I join as an OIG, that will be a full-time role, of course. So yeah, just to clarify that out. So then I built WaxP tools, which is a CPU renting service, and I built like all the tools around it. For example, transaction tracker, where you can filter multiple transactions using custom logic, stuff like that. My goal for this election is one thing. I think so. Obviously, there has been a little bit debate already on whether OIG role should be technical or less technical, more technical, and also whether we need a dev rel or not. Right? What I envision is like in 2024 today, 70% of transactions in every block is approximately alien worlds. If you look at NFT marketplace, top one is usually alien worlds, and then the majority of other chunk is Funko, right? If you combine all this together. So like even all the guilds together, they're relying on these two projects for the success. And if you really look from the incentive, we really need to bootstrap liquidity. And then, I want to use all the tools I have in place in an OIG to incentivize that, apart, like in addition to what my original duties are. I think current OIGs are already doing a great job in technical evaluations. There is a tussle little bit here and there, right? But I think everybody will benefit with the growth of Wax, because there was an issue back in 2023, 2022 when we had to revise our incentive model for guilds, right? Because it was not sustainable to run a guild because of that. And there was an internal debate that when it was a good time, guilds benefited. So why not struggle? So I think all that questions also get resolved once we have a sustainable economy on Wax. And then, then we can optimize this model further. So that's the vision I'm running, 10 million TVL. Easier onboarding for devs and users, and then clear communication. Like we have a lot of tools in place, which I think other projects, a lot of Wax tool Labs 100 projects developed, but community or projects don't even know about it. Like even today, if we look at Wax Labs, a lot of proposals are just for documentation and then writing guides and stuff, right? And we have come 4 years into the blockchain. Still today, we see these kinds of proposals clearly means there is a lack of communication somewhere we need to fix. And, there is somewhere a very big gap we need to bridge together. So that's why. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Long introduction. A lot of topics covered or mentioned there. So let's move back to some of them later. Let's see if Henrik is ready to introduce himself as well.
Sure, I hope so. Hello, I'm Henrik Piga, usually known just as Piga, founder of the Pixel Journey. I'm a designer, developer, photographer. I'm a bit of an influencer, and today I'm here as a candidate for the 10th OIG election. I've been around WAX for 3.5, 4 years now, and many of me know me from all sorts of different projects. My vision for influencing the future of WAX here from the Inspector General Office is one focused especially on increasing the onboarding incentives from across all the projects on WAX, not only, well, where many of the projects today mainly seem to focus the onboarding or the acquiring of new users from other projects in the ecosystem already, then I think we could do more on focusing on increasing our outreach to new users and getting some growth to our user base again. I believe that onboarding is the most crucial step for any project to grow, and if correctly executed, then it will bring life to all the aspects of the blockchain as well, such as DeFi activity and new project launches, further up development, and new prosperous opportunities for users to visit. I very much consider WAX one of the most promising versatile blockchains around these days, and it already has an awesome amount of established infrastructure tools, easily enabling all sorts of builders without needing a lot of tech knowledge to access everything from creating NFTs, blends, drops, tokens, or farms, or even a DAO. And well, it enables projects starting in the space to easily access everything they need. So the only question now is how we get to break this barrier of information to get new people to know about all these opportunities as well. And well, a last very important part to mention here, where I might differ a little bit from the other candidates and past office members, is that I don't have that much WAX contract development experience, at least not yet. But it's something I hope to learn more about. I am a web developer, and I have developed a few different kinds of apps. But WAX contract development is something I still need to learn more about. On the other hand, I hope to bring more of my own perspective as a UI UX designer with more experience in marketing and educational creation of onboarding material. Yeah, and as a recent creator in the space, of course. That's about it.
Awesome. If anyone has any questions at all, any time during this, just hit the raise your hand button. And now, for most of us in here, we know him, but we want him to introduce himself anyway. Yanis?
Yes, hello. I'm Yanis, one of the 3 current IGs. I've been in an IG for the past 33 months. I've had it was an extremely rewarding experience for me personally and professionally. And since mid last year, I had the honor to host the Roundtables, the community calls that we all gather for every Tuesday. And therefore, you might have seen me in the past, and you're pretty familiar with my visions and what I want to bring to governance on WAX as an IG. Long story short, I prepared a blog post on Medium outlining my visions for this next term. This term is ending on August. I'm reposting the Medium article just to summarize it on a 3-point agenda. I think we have done a good job fostering the feedback culture on WAX, enabling more voices to influence the general strategy of WAX, be be open for feedbacks, work out possible solutions. And therefore, I'm coming to my second agenda point, which is that I'm planning to influence governance on WAX by questioning and revising some small details about governance on WAX, and hopefully also try to enhance our decision making on WAX by implementing DAO-like structures and mechanisms that can help us organize the decision-making process and bring those ideas to life. All that will lead to working out more effective measures and establishing a framework to mainly embed the community more into governance on WAX and establish clever mechanisms to funnel the feedback which we are just gathering inside this feedback culture onto ideas and have them implemented all during my next IG term. That sums it up.
Cool. I'm gonna jump back to Kaz if that is okay, because he was just introducing himself. He did not go into much of why he was going into OIG or what he can contribute with. So if you wanna jump onto that in any way.
All right. Thank you, Anders. Yeah, I literally just basically just said hi. Yeah, so I mean, I've got a lot of ideas. I've got a lot of things I want to see here on WAX, but I also know that well, making promises is easy. Delivering them is something else, right? So I'm only going to promise, or like, you know, bring forward like the things as campaign initiatives that I know that I could deliver myself, like without, you know, like some heroic, you know, intervention or something crazy happening, right? Overall, I want to see more. Like, I know, like, there's like with the state that WAX is in now, a lot of it is because we don't have as many great games as we used to. Back in 2021, when this project, or I mean, when this blockchain was at almost $1, there was a lot of projects here, right? There was a lot of games, and little by little, it's sort of withered away. And I think, you know, when you take a look at platforms like let's say PlayStation, right? They have PlayStation exclusives. They have games there that are they think it's worthy enough, right? And customers think it's worthy enough that it brings demand and attention to their platform. Same goes with Xbox, same goes with Epic Games, same goes with Steam, every single platform, right? And I think, well, if we want WAX to be able to get more of a larger slice of the pie, we need to have exclusive games here that are worth people's time and money, right? That's actually like a compelling game, you know. I think the key to that is through the technology. That's kind of the approach I've been taking for the past year. I think the technology that exists, like the Antelope Leap software, because I mean, EOS is almost out of the picture now, in my opinion, because with their RAM prices, like it's showing me like a complete, like, I don't even want to talk about it, but it's like, I think WAX has a real opportunity to step up here because the technology is amazing and it definitely works. And once you really understand the smart contracts, you see that you can do things here that you can't really do on any other blockchain. So that's you know, my.
I have a question there before we move to Mana's question. How do you think being elected as an IG will help in this matter?
So there's three things that I want to do if I had the privilege of being an IG. The first thing is, if you make a WAX Labs proposal, you're gonna get a call. Doesn't matter how silly the idea is, even if it's you trying to buy an island, you're gonna get a call. We'll talk it out, right? You're gonna get some sort of constructive criticism, some sort of feedback, right? If you care about this platform, we're gonna care about you. It's gonna be that simple. That's not like a yes to every idea, but it's like, yeah, like you'll know that it's not just a copy pasted response, right? You'll know that some effort went into this. We actually thought about it, right? So, well, that's how I'll approach. That's something that I know I can do, right? Just as an individual, right? For WAX Labs, if I was an IG. The second thing I'm going to do is I want to create something, not necessarily exactly a WAX Foundation, but more like a WAX Content Creators Foundation, right? As is the case with a lot of the finer things in life, you need someone to teach you how to enjoy it. And the Wax ecosystem has a lot of great things, but people don't know how to enjoy it. We need content creators who are showing them playing Web3 games. They're ripping open packs. They're buying NFTs. They're showing what it means, what it feels like to collect NFTs, hundreds of NFTs, thousands of NFTs. We need people to show them like making art, people to show them like making, like even programming, building smart contracts, doing UI, UX design, game design. There's a lot of topics that people could pick up, and I don't want people to do anything that they don't already want to do anyways, right? But it's like, if people are building content like that's attracting, that's gathering an audience on like Twitch or on YouTube or whatever social media platform, then we should add them to build some kind of roster, build some kind of platform, so that 24/7 you want to watch some Wax related content, you can watch it live, and I think that'd be a great way to sort of build cohesion across all the communities that exist here on Wax. And I think it'd be a way to I just think it's very underutilized. If you take a look at, let's say, like Dr. Disrespect, every time he posts a clip of him opening a knife in CS:GO, you just see case prices just go straight up, right? Because people being shown, what is the process, what is the feeling, right? The excitement, the anticipation, being shown how to enjoy is a very important thing that I think is not done enough here on Wax. Now, the third thing I would do is have a dedicated smart contract development platform, and kind of be like a subsidiary of Wax Labs. Now, I already have something like this set up. It's under ide.doyen.gg. It's I call it the Wax Web IDE. It's a fork of EOS's Web IDE. And basically what you can do is, right out of your browser, you can code smart contracts, compile them, and deploy it straight to the blockchain. You don't even have to download the contract. You can just sign in and deploy it straight to the blockchain. And what I want to do with that is I want to obviously get some sort of GitHub integration so that you can save projects properly. You can import other people's projects, and eventually maybe even make it something like a smart contract C++ code marketplace, right? Where you would have, obviously the code, the little segments of code would be free, or if someone wants to charge, whatever, right? But the idea is that, if you want to how do I, read Atomic Asset NFT data? Oh, it's just this little pack. Okay, drag and drop, boom. There's a little code. There's the Atomic Data header. There's the Atomic Assets header, like all this stuff, and it's just like you're ready to go. You can actually, you don't have to, especially because if you're a new developer, you're trying to get into smart contracts. The resources, you might have some good tech, some stuff to get set up, but there's no real juice, in everyone's documentation.
So to summarize that, you want to help make it easier to build smart contracts. And I have seen your ID. It's great. People have been asking for things like that in the past. They have problem building the CDT and everything and getting that working on their own machines. I will cut you off though, because there was a long talk there. Let's go over to Manas that had something to bring up.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Michael's question. So, so by the way, the guys who have just joined, this is Manas. I'm one of the candidates for OIG. So Michael has asked whether we see OIG as just the watchdog of VPs, and just a bridge between Wax and VPs, or is it a more focused role towards pushing change initiatives, right? I think for any role, there are two ways to look at it, right? You can go by just the job description, where, if you just go by the job description, you will say that it's a technical role, and then, we just need to make sure the guild evaluations are timed, everything is aligned, and then things are running smoothly. But if you go by the ethos of the role, I think at the end of the day, why was that role needed, right? We needed that role so that we can keep all the VPs motivated, right? And we can also make sure that there is enough transparency among the community and different users and projects. So if you focus on that ethos, having a vision, obviously as an OIG, I believe my role is not to actually build these things or these items, but my role is to create the right incentives so that the things happen. Because if Wax flourishes, all the guilds that are involved, that are putting active efforts, they will feel more motivated to be a part of it, right? Their incentives would be right. And similarly, if we have good chunk of users, everything, right, then all the problems that like all the different members of community are speaking about, like whether it is not enough users, like which comes from projects, or not enough liquidity, which comes from users and projects both, right? All of these problems will also be solved. So I think like we are in a time, and especially 2024, where we are like more than halfway across the bull market. We need a visionary position. Like it should not be just the job description, but we need something visionary, and OIG needs to lead that campaign out. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, nice summary there, Giannis.
Yes, I want to add one remark here. I clearly see some interesting initiatives to solve some of our current problems, right? Very specific initiatives to tackle some issues and concerns we have. But for me personally, for me as an IG, it is not about suggesting specific initiatives to solve those concerns. Or as far as we are concerned as an OIG, we do look for improvements of those concerns, right? But we are currently in the middle of defining the process on how we can turn the concerns and issues, like practically, mechanically, into initiatives. So that's where we are at the moment, and that's what the Roundtable has added to governance on wax during the past weeks and months. And I do believe that by rendering governance on wax more accessible and inclusive for the several parts of this community, the broader community consisting of VPs, devs, creators, guilds, right, the average user, we will learn to funnel this feedback more effectively into the correct initiatives that can enhance and grow the Wax ecosystem.
So right now, what you really answered was what you as an elected IG thinks of some of the ways they want to approach, more than what you as a candidate would want to see here, right?
Yeah, so
you are in a tricky position, so
yeah, it's a delicate position. So all those feedbacks and concerns and many good ideas get shared in this public forum, right? And sometimes even through DMs. Just today, I had a very interesting discussion about what role open source plays for the further growth of Wax as an ecosystem. So I shouldn't be formulating exact agendas with initiatives or promises that I'm not solely responsible for implementing, but instead be building the framework to enable the implementation of most of those ideas and initiatives. That's what I'm looking for as an IG candidate specifically.
Good. I just wanted to prevent you from being defensive or anything when someone has any feedback on what could be done differently or anything. You're here as a candidate today.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I will soon move forward to next topic because we have not come a lot further. Maybe we won't come a lot further in the discussions today. I do have a questionnaire interview that I will send to all the candidates. I will see if they can respond to those. Any of these questions I will then publish so anyone can read, hopefully before the election is over, and everyone has responded to that. So if let's start to move forward with the discussion. Mike, did you have any question?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to derail you moving forward too much if it's going to result in a long answer, but since the topic of liquidity came up, I wanted to ask what everybody thinks about how much that's impacted by the fact that none of our major platforms here are open source. And do you think it's a problem, and how would you go about incentivizing it, or not even incentivizing it, but just fixing it moving forward, if you think it's a problem?
Okay, yeah, I promise to give it short, but so I think it of as a flywheel, right? We need to onboard users and liquidity at the same time, right? So if you just focus on core liquidity, One, we have to unlock whatever is existingly there but not being utilized, right? On-chain lending, derivative, things like that, initiatives, like setting the incentives so that people come up with these projects or build these projects is one. Then, if you look at Telegram, there is a big unlock happening, 800 million users. The insight is basically that, to interact with Telegram, a mini bot, you don't even need to know what what blockchain is and how it works. And an average town store app has about 100 million users. Even like if you look at Alcor, like Zuler frequently covers hamster combat on his Twitter, right? And this is because they've grown so popular, and they've grown in like 3 months. They acquired 100 million users. TapSwap, which Woofy also utilized to grow its community, has like 40 million users. So if I'm an IG, one, educating, I will just create some incentives so that projects on Wax know, or they have the tools in place so that they can onboard these users and how to take advantage of that matter. So education around that, and then also incentivizing projects so that they can build around this. If you solve the two together, we can have the flywheel running and then bootstrap liquidity here.
I have a quick question there before we move forward, because I had this question already asked to me in a DM before today. You say that you want to bring in more locked volume, specifically, I think it was 10 million. How would you as an enable that by being an IG? How does that help by being an IG? Or how would you do it?
So like very direct, there are two initiatives which directly I think IG can do, right? One is there is an ecosystem contribution part in the guilds. In the short term, we can incentivize, given that we can build a strong case among all guilds, we can incentivize them to build products around this, maybe collaborate, right? Obviously, I have to build a strong case with them, with all of these guys who are here, right? Second, Wax Lab, we can say that it's an optional role, but if I'm looking for a vision, if I'm looking to work toward the ethos, which I really want to, then I would want to also double down my efforts on Wax Labs and make sure, like, instead of it being a passive that projects come and then, they submit proposals, I would do or come up with resources so that there is a more active communication going on, where we actively guide projects that these are the kind of initiatives we look for. We actively research and then publish maybe research reports on these are the things which can benefit Wax, and then we can sort of align Wax Lab proposals more towards that. So these are two things which I can directly do, apart from going above and beyond other things.
Okay, let's move to Cass. I guess that he raised his hand while the question was about DeFi, locked value, and open source. Well, lack of big open source projects.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a paradox, the whole thing, because you have liquidity, right? Being it's a very valuable thing to have. Right, it's great to have, but it comes at the expense of whoever's providing it, right? Sure, you can get an advertised APR, but it's like, well, there's an opportunity cost to that too, right? And it's kind of like a paradox because it's in a very chaotic medium of trade. It's like being portrayed as a very stable source of wealth acquisition, and fundamentally, I think for any smart contract enabled blockchain, its value it's directly correlated to the projects that it holds. This isn't the case for stuff like Monero and Bitcoin, right, where it's like, well, they have explicit use cases, right? There's a lot of inherent value in how the architecture works. But for anything that's smart contract enabled, it's about, well, what programs are there on that blockchain, right? Because that's what people actually access. No one comes to a blockchain just like, oh, I love creating a wallet. It's just so much fun. Like, that's not real, right? It's you can make the UI as polished as possible. You can make the resource model as simple as possible. But that's not even the reason in the first place why people would come to Wax. They'd come to Wax because they saw a project they like. I can guarantee that's how almost everyone even got here. That like after like the first initial wave of when Wax was launched, most everyone, they came here from a project. I came here if I saw an advertisement for Alien Worlds, and I've stuck around.
You and many.
So, yeah. So I think in that case, the whole liquidity thing is a bit of a paradox. I think so we get great products here. We're going to see that liquidity go up, right? But There's no way you can't force that, and you can't coerce people into doing that, right? They gotta, if they want to put something up for a project, it's kind of up to them, right? However, on the topic of open sourcing smart contracts and how that might be playing against maybe that liquidity thing, that the transparency clause, right? I think that's not necessarily the case. Overall, I think open sourcing smart contracts is a very delicate process, mostly because it's so competitive. All the game theory seems to point towards you not being incentivized to share your technology, because what you should be doing is capitalizing on it as much as possible, because we've seen this time and time again. If a good idea hits the space, everyone's just going to copy it. That's just how it works. That's how people work, right? So if you're open sourcing your technology and you're not capitalizing on it, well, I mean, you look at Nikola Tesla, right? Like he tried to basically do things in the good of humanity, and he died broke, poor, old and alone, right? So if you are building technology, you got to make sure you're getting your payday as well. And so I think that is something that, more talks need to be had about it. I don't know a perfect system for that, it is something that there's going to be some give and take, right? Because it's not that like I don't want, like, for example, like I built a crazy asset standard. It's not that I don't want the rest of the Wax community to have this. It's more so like, well, I want to make sure I get something. I want to make sure the Wax community gets something. And I think that's the most healthy way to build the smart contract technology, making sure that all parties are definitely benefiting. And it's not just, one person or like one team doing all the research and innovation, and then another team swoops in, and now that all the hard work's done, they just have, let's say better execution. They're able to launch a crazy project using that new tech, I think that'd be very disheartening, right? If anyone was in that position. So
I have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the total locked value, that basically means that people want more funds being traded on the chain? That's basically what they want to achieve by having more locked value. Is that before the product, or is the product before the value locked? What has to come first?
I think
forecast first, and then we can move forward. Yeah,
the product, right?
Yeah,
it's a bit of a, because I know like you sell the news, right? In crypto, you sell the news, right? And I mean, it's not an easy thing to answer, but for the most part, like I personally believe, it's my opinion, I personally believe you got to have, like, the product's got to be there first. The product's got to be exemplary, right? And then you're just building momentum. But if you build them, if you just, put out just like the raw ideas and you try to get the hype and stuff going, you can try to keep that momentum, in place, but it's very difficult, right? It will constantly like lose speed, and it will constantly wither away. Whereas if the product already exists and it works, right, then you've got nothing to worry about, right? You just keep going.
Yeah, so. Good. I just wanted to specify that, and then we move over to Henrik. He had risen his hand for a while back.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I very much agree with a lot of what was just mentioned, but I'm also a very strong believer in that it's the projects of Wax that need to bring forward the TVL, and not necessarily Wax in itself. Wax and the OIG and the Wax labs could do perhaps a little bit more to incentivize bigger developments and growth, or rewarding various projects that has done well so far. But it sounds a little bit dangerous to me to like try to scale up the TVL of Wax exclusively through Wax Labs funds, and because like it was mentioned, somebody has to pay for it. But if it's instead done via new projects, and most importantly, the projects also having an onboarding route for users to come in and to bring in this new value and the liquidity, then the TVL can grow more like organically or naturally, sustainably along the way.
Yeah, that was a good question, with the question on what Juan said in the chat before. How would you get the funds to provide the incentive for people to lock up more value? Because if you talk about providing an incentive, it has to come from somewhere, and what is that? So yeah, it's a good question for a question, I guess.
Can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, two things. If you pick just two things, right? One, let's look at Wax Lab. Right now, there are like about 150 million wax sitting, which is around 8 million. I don't even need that. Like, if we play it right with 200k, 300k wax, I think it's enough. Average project on Wax Lab gets funded with $10,000 to $20,000, right? We can have good, decent 10, 20 projects out there which build great DeFi products, which can be later used to bring in liquidity from users. And then we combine it with the onboarding from the Telegram. On average, let's say if we build the right tools to acquire these users, like let's say out of 800 million, I don't think it's very ambitious to onboard 100 million users if we play it right and build the right tools. If we take advantage of the right meta, 100 million, even if we monetize 1 million users, we can bring enough TVL to Wax. So I think it's more perspective. And then, I'm not saying that we should just use the funds from Wax Lab to just bring liquidity. No, I'm saying build products, onboard users, in turn they bring the TVL.
Okay, cool. Janis?
Yes, on the topic of TVL and increasing TVL, that's certainly a byproduct of our efforts to continue to grow and enhance the Wax ecosystem, right? We have a highly organic community on Wax with a high user retention and people that stick around with Wax and are interested in Wax governance. This is unique. This is a unique value proposition in our chain. We have this organic community. We can't find ways and means and to ramp up the TVL in an unnatural way. Instead, I'm advocating that we focus on enhancing the ecosystem through revising the governance, embedding the community more into this process. For example, with a vote weight inside Wax Labs, so that we can get those concerns and issues resolved, and hopefully get those features built that will help us grow the Wax ecosystem. Right? I don't think there's an initiative that can actively be implemented from inside the IG that will increase the TVL on Wax over time, just by spending and getting things built. So we've had this discussion about what's first, the chicken or egg problem on Wax. What do we need first? Do we need the users? Do we need the products, right? I think we did consent during those calls that we need the products to bring in those users. We need to start innovating again. We need to build what the community wants, actually. We need to find incentives to make this happen. But we don't need to actively incentivize this development. We need to put in the framework to be able to get this feedback and turn it into initiatives. That's where we are at the moment. It's impossible for me as an IG, for example, or if I'm re-elected, to suggest to you initiatives which will certainly drive up the TVL on Wax. That's nothing I can promise. That's nothing an IG should promise. But an IG should be focusing on putting the ways and means into place for a higher TVL to happen at some point in the future. This is a long run. We are a unique ecosystem alongside all the other chains that do have a similar approach that we also follow: DeFi, GameFi, NFTs, FTs. And I also don't think NFTs are dead. I mean, they are not as much appreciated at the moment as they were in 2021. But a cool product incorporating NFTs into their product, into their platform, those products will lead the race when we get over the bad sentiment of NFTs and FTs in the coming months, right?
Yeah, on that, there has been many projects in the past year that has been very successful that are NFT based. So no, they're not dead. It's just the products that are not attractive at the moment. Cass had a question or a thought.
Yeah, I had a quick question for Janice. You mentioned the voting mechanism on like a Wax Labs proposal.
Yeah.
well, what would you do if, what if the island, what if the community voted yes on the island? Would you veto it? Would you say, no, we can't buy an island? Or you guys gonna cough it up? You're gonna buy the island?
So everybody wants the Wax Island. I'm pretty certain that we won't fund any Wax Island in the distant future, and not many parts of the community would vote for such a thing. But I do think that the community.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, but I do think that the community at the moment is underrepresented inside Wax Labs. If the poor mission of Wax Labs is to enable public goods for this chain, then the community should have a say in it, even if it's 2 or 5 votes, for example. So we should keep the rules and mechanisms in place to safeguard the community and to prevent uncontrolled spending, but we should not neglect the community's voice when it comes to producing public goods for a richer ecosystem.
Awesome.
Cool. Now we have already been here for over 50 minutes. 45 is the recording. I just want to double check how much time we should have today, Giannis, because I have questions and topics that can keep us here for many more hours, and I'm not sure that we will. Will we keep it to an hour or will we continue?
Oh, we usually derail to 2 hours. That has become the norm. And I personally could have this conversation every day of the week. So as long as everyone is happy with it, we can go on.
Yeah,
Sure.
I also have more time. So let's say in around 10 minutes, we're here. We have been an hour. If anyone wants to feel like, okay, I don't have more time today, it's fine. But we can continue anyway. I have some questions that are rather difficult to dig into and question as well. Lisa has a thought or question.
Sure, and you can sprinkle in the answers as you're answering the other ones, but WAX CTO Lucas has said by the end of the year we should be able to scale to 5x of Alien Worlds clients. In other words, be able to grow dramatically. And since it seems that OIG is primarily related to the block production and ensuring all goes well, I'm curious to know what, since you would be elected during this time period, what you think your role should be and what you would do to address scalability and issues that might come up if we bring, let's say we bring a lot of users and clients in through any number of ways. How will we make sure that everything is functioning properly?
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. In simple terms, the interoperability of all those communities and representatives of different cults and religions on WAX, we need to enhance that. So I'm pretty sure that we are not saturated on the tech side. There's plenty of room to go in terms of scalability. And most recently, or during the past 12 months, the technical roadmap has outlined that WAX is looking for interoperability with other blockchains and other blockchain ecosystems. I think we can manage to draw those communities into WAX and show them how amazing WAX is. All that while not sacrificing the performance for a single user on WAX or a single average user on WAX. We had 2021, late 2021, we had severe issues with public APIs, the amount of CPU needed to interact with the chain. We've overcome this. We have enhanced WAX. The WAX software is more mature than it was back then. And going forward, we are looking into those optimizations and keeping the chain healthy and performant, leading the race in terms of TPS or what's possible on the technical side, like our unique permissions on the smart contract side, which are one of its kind when you look at all the other blockchain spaces. So I'm not too concerned that we wouldn't scale a 5x traffic incoming tomorrow, since we had those levels in 2021 and demonstrated that we can operate those numbers very well.
I have a question here, because a lot of what you said are broad answers. And since you have an insight in the IG, what role does the IG have on scalability?
Scalability, so we do have the OIG guidelines, putting in place a nice framework to operate this very decentralized and diverse network of node operators, and establishing standards, and going forward looking into having a top-notch public API service landscape, right? That's the main purpose of the guidelines. It does affect every single user on Wax, yet it seems like only the very technical persons get what we do through the guidelines, right? So we have become very technical in the past. In my past term, we have become very technical. We have added a few APIs. Built the incentive to host those APIs and to have them publicly available. Going forward, we are looking to saturate the landscape with any additional API or service or product that can help us ramp up the scalability of Wax. We are actively looking into that, but it hasn't been our biggest concern in the past 12 months, really.
I have a big topic on guidelines and governance, of course. I always have on that. I will bring that up later. Now I will cut you off and I will bring to the next one. And Manas was the first one to raise his hand.
Yeah. So to answer to Lisa, I think that happens around different blockchains all the time. So what happens is, all like the blockchain team coordinates with all the node operators and they run a load test in place, right, to test their limits. Are we ready? For example, when ordinals happened, almost every EVM chain tested their limits and okay, what is the TPS we can achieve, or what is the performance impact, everything. So first we need to measure it, and I think OIG plays a very important role to coordinate among all guilds and really see what the limits, current limits are, and where we want to go, and then what is needed. Like, is there a code change needed? Is there a infra update needed among nodes? What is needed, right? So I think that's where OIG plays really role, and then based on what is needed, we'll change the evaluation criteria going forward, right? Like, we'll monitor it and change the evaluation criteria so that over the next 3 months or like before the next evaluation, we are able to achieve these outcomes or at least come closer to those. So I think as an OIG, that's how I would approach. Coordinate the test, load test, and then, really see what our limits are and where we want to go.
Yeah. Good answer. I guess we move to Cast then.
Yeah, I think there's two main variables that you have to just worry about when it comes to scaling more users, and that is RAM and CPU, right? I know this has sort of been talked to death already, but I'm gonna try to give some more interesting points here. So I think because it really is just down to the resource model. The blockchain is more than capable of scaling to however many transactions. I think most blocks they're more than half of it is empty, and it's just like the majority of transactions are just alien worlds and farmers world. They're just working away. But I think when it comes to scaling, well, I get a more important question is, well, what does the future of RAM look like? Because we can have all the quantitative easing that we want of Wax, and the CPU will just be spread around, shared, like it'll be evenly distributed, and that's no problem. And we also have the power up model, so it should be fine in that regard. But the RAM is the main concern, and after seeing what's happened with EOS, if we have a 70x bump in RAM price, because we can't print no more RAM, right? Like that's a huge problem, right? So is that a real concern? Because that's the only thing that's going to prevent that could like halt this chain. If we have I know there's like a couple NFT templates that have over like 100 million NFTs minted, right? That's not healthy for the blockchain, right? if we have like 10 of those games, right? If that's what brings the 5x, onboarding of users, it's like we're going to be in a serious problem, right? RAM prices go through the roof. People can't even open account balances to trade a token, So I guess that's my question to everyone here. Like, or I guess the standing guilds. What's gonna happen with RAM?
Yeah, I can throw in two things there. One, EOS stopped the inflation of RAM. They stopped increasing RAM every block. Wax is still increasing RAM. The other thing is that, sure, this could happen on Wax as well, but what happened on EOS is that the EOS Network Foundation went in and bought a shit ton of RAM, so to speak, and that is let's not bring up what we think about that if that is legit, but that increased the price for sure, and that could happen, and this is a problem. And RAM and tech scaling is something in the background that the guilds has been talking about from day one, pretty much. It is the faster CPUs that block producer servers have, the machines, the physical machines under, the faster the CPU are, they're usually the commercial gaming CPUs. They don't handle the same amount of RAM as an enterprise machine that can have terabytes of RAM. They are a little bit slower on the CPU. That would lead to a little bit higher CPU cost for transactions, but they can scale more RAM, which means they can store more of this data. And you can also load drives as RAM, and potentially that has issues, but that's not for discussion today. But I just wanted to mention these things, that these are has been discussed since day one. They are still being discussed. They are still topics. I personally built a platform just to investigate the CPU and the benchmark of BPs to help improve this over time as well. Dashboard.waxsweden.org, and it's just a few weeks back. It's live, a version that you can go and test. Yeah, sponsored, exactly. I earn nothing from it, so it's fine. Well, I get points for it, so that's something. The IG will rate it. You love it, okay? So anyone elected, you get my votes if you love my product. No. Yeah, the scaling is a problem, and you said CPU and RAM scaling. We also have API issues. When majority of users experience issues on Wax, it's usually not the chain, it's the APIs that they use to communicate with the chain that have problems. It is indexers or something making Atomic Hub, your inventory is not loading, you open a pack, you can't see your NFTs. That's not the chain, it's actually the API that the site is reading the data from the chain, or you're pushing a transaction and it doesn't reach the chain. Not all the time, but often that is the layer between the user and the chain, and that is also something that we need to look at, and that is something that has been looked at and constantly discussed in all the roundtables and all the guild groups and all the chats and everything. And something that I have a big topic for discussing later, of course, because this is my passion question since day one, pretty much. I always ask the IG about things on this. But leaving that, let's move over to Henrik.
Hello. Yeah, I was just going to comment what could happen in case that Alien Wolves suddenly blew up and Wax couldn't support it anymore due to I'm going to focus mostly on the resources needed on the side of the users. And I think that projects like Alien Wolves could do more to support the users playing the platforms as well. Like, they already have a few daily transactions, but perhaps there could be some sort of a way to extend that via ownership of some NFTs or some sort of membership. They could also look into redesigning certain aspects of the mining to reduce the amount of transactions and resources needed by the users. So I don't think that Wax would have any issue with supporting growth of any projects right now or in the coming years. I mean, like Janice already mentioned, we already tried very high demand back in 21, and a lot of issues there were improved on since then. Like, we now have the power up mechanisms and the much cheaper RAM prices.
I will just add one comment there as well. For infrastructure operators, guilds, scaling slowly is probably not the problem. if there's a drop of 10 million people coming and trying to do everything at once, there will be issues with the middle layer, and they will have to handle that moving forward. That is probably not possible to avoid, but having that jump in usage like this from nowhere, a few guilds will handle that. Some might have problems with that. Long term, I don't think that's a problem. We had some hands raised, but they are not raised anymore. Okay, Janis?
Yes, I want to get into the topic and ask Kaz a question, and if he agrees and how he thinks about it. So what we just described, we referred to recently as the difference between service providers and value providers on Wax when looking at the guild roster, right? On the one side, we are getting too technical. On the other side, we don't want to lose this USP of being very technical and Wax operating the way it does. How can we solve that? How can we keep the balance between being technically excellent and also providing good values to the community? I mean, a good API is a value too, right? But how can we keep the service providers and the API and the value providers on one level on Wax?
The service providers and the API providers on one level on Wax. I mean, I think you just can't. Can you not? Is there something that's preventing you from doing both?
No, we have a good framework for that in place, and assign the balance in points between technical operations and product or ecosystem contributions in general. We are balancing that ever since we started building this framework. Most recently, through the latest 2 guideline iterations, we bumped the score for ecosystem contributions, for example, from 10 to 12, because we want to keep accelerating, innovating, getting products out to the community, and also getting broader ecosystem contributions, right? How can we even enhance that going forward? Do we need to have some suggestions, right? And Michael can speak about it. For example, splitting value and service provision on Wax, technical guilds, product guilds, ecosystem guilds. What do you think about that?
I think I have a better understanding of your question now. So you're saying like the guilds that are mostly focused on setting up the core framework for everyone to use and interact with the blockchain versus the guilds that are trying to deliver actual products so that people can, maybe developers can create stuff faster, maybe people can create collections faster. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a very difficult thing to. I don't think you can assign that role to different guilds. I think that's kind of like guilds themselves have to sort of sort themselves into who they want to be, because fundamentally, like that, we're talking about different kinds of people here, right? Some people want to be able to just, do the work and be able to provide the value, right? Like, let's say like a lot, because you don't want crazy amounts of innovation happening from the people who are doing like the framework and just keeping everything running, right? You want that to be stable, but you also want the people who are actually innovating and creating, new solutions, right? There's a lot more risk in that, right? It's a different kind of person, but they should also you can't have both of these different like qualities inside one entity, inside one person. It's just you're either one or the other, right? You're either someone who's stable and like you can do your job for a long period of time, you can keep everything going well, and you're very reliable, very high percent success rate, or you're someone who's gonna you're gonna make a lot of mistakes here and there. You're gonna come up with a lot of ideas. Some of them are gonna be really good, and some of them are gonna be really good products for the chain, and some of them might not be. It's just these are totally different groups of people, and I think I don't think the OIG is in a position, or I think anyone's really in a position to tell which guilds, like who they're allowed to be. I think, the guilds themselves have to sort themselves into, what kind of guild do they want to be? And granted, if a guild's large enough, they have enough team members, well, they can have different sectors, right? They can have a sector just for operations and keeping everything steady and stable, and another sector for research and innovation, which is arguably equally as important. But you can't build a house if the foundation's, crumbling, right? So
I like that.
Yeah, okay, let's just, I think, okay, or we have one hand raised. Do you want to jump in on this before we move forward?
Yeah, I would keep it simple, right? So split into two buckets. What's important for all the guilds? What's something we want to incentivize the guilds, right? What's important? Obviously, that's something every guild have to do. But let's say in what's not that important, but what's preferred, we just create, okay, these are the couple of equal options. You can pick among these options, but let's have slots, right? These are the maximum guilds who can pick this option, or these are the minimum guilds who can pick options. So I think keeping it that, and giving them choice among different options which are equal in optional items, I think that would be a better approach, and it would cater to most of the things. And then that would also help guilds align to what they feel they can contribute to most, and what is more, like, it will be more their choice, right? So I would categorize like this: first, like 2 levels, and then give them equal options. That's my answer.
Cool. Okay, let's jump on the next topic, which is pretty much on this topic. I have 3 questions on this topic. Well, 3 different discussion points, so we can see that I put a lot of thoughts onto this today. Rating guilds. So just break down each guild every 6 weeks. Send in a report. Hey, this is what we have been doing. Between each report there is a tech evaluation, and on that report is a tech evaluation, so they check everything's working as it should, and then we get scored based on that by the IGs. This is the main job for the IGs, to rate these, and then they have a lot of things on top of that that are opinionated, I guess. At least that's how it has been until now. And they have re-evaluated their guidelines many times. They have been... The foundation is still here from the start, but there has been a lot of changes. I don't think if you compare... I haven't done that. If you compare what the guidelines are now compared to the beginning, how big of a difference it would actually be. They have tried to account for how to rate different type of contributions against each other. And this is the biggest problem, the biggest challenge, or whatever we should call it. How can you rate products from people or from guilds that are very different from each other? Someone creating content that might help onboard or educate people. Someone creating a platform that turns very big, like Atomic Hub, Atomic Assets. Someone building a new DeFi project, like Mike D is doing right now. Someone building tools for developers that doesn't show any user what they are doing, but in the background it helps a few developers, or it help infrastructure operators to maintain and run their infrastructure. How can you evaluate guilds on this when the scoring, the more score you have for your product, the more pay you will get? It's a big jump from the top down to the, although that's a different topic. You get evaluated on what you are adding as a value, as your contribution, as your product. How can you find a system where you can evaluate? Let's say there is a great picture of a monkey, a fish, an elephant, and everything, and they are all taking the same test. How can you ensure that it's a fair evaluation for products, or can you do that? Well, that's a topic, a discussion. I don't know. Manas has his hand raised, so he can jump on his opinion or thoughts on this first.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, I would start with the main question, right? What main question is right now, what do we need on Wax the most? Like, is it the tech? Like, do we need to improve the tech? Do we need to maybe onboard users? Like, what is the most important? So what I would do is, first I would get a consensus among guilds and maybe have a priority list, right? Like, this is like most guilds agree that this is most important and this is number 2, number 3, right? And then once I have this priority order, I know how to score them, which criteria would be given more preferred. I don't think it should be like, you already told that it has been revised a couple of times. Obviously it should be fluid enough to account for the changing times, because at some stage of the cycle we may need more users, but like, let's say once we solve the user problem in 6 months down the line, we may need to ramp our tech or infra, right? So the guidelines need to be fluid, but we should set up a system in such a way that we can easily alter these guidelines, and then we always have a consensus first, right? Getting consensus is hard, but I think if we start with that and start with the main question of what do we need right now the most, and list 5 items, then I think scoring becomes way easier because we have sorted out the main question.
I have a question on your thoughts there. So right now, let's say that the most important thing is onboarding, and you focus on providing more points for those building things that help with that. Yeah, and so then wait, and then you have a situation where those that are providing another type of value are dropped down on the list, and they are not paid as much, and they can't keep running the same infra, they can't keep the same team running. And then we have another type of situation where, let's say we have a major infrastructure problem, blockchain problem. We need those tech nerds that sit in the background in their dark corners, basements, and they enjoy reading manuals and doing all the kind of crazy things. We need those people to come in and dig into the problem, but you have pushed them out because you focused on those providing the onboarding. What happens then?
Yeah, I mean, if we come to that state, that means the priorities are never, set in straight, right? Because I think even though onboarding is a problem, the single most important priority for all the guilds is keep the system up and running at least a good enough decent level, right? So I think all those tech nerds, like I won't call them tech nerds, but all those people are very important to that cycle. So I think that would be number one, like in any case, right? Like if I have to list down in priority, and then comes obviously onboarding, right? Like everything is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like there are multiple things which will be equal in priority, right? We just need to like fix a cycle and then fix the scoring accordingly. And there will be edge cases we need to account for that. So for example, we know that maintaining very tech heavy guilds is very important for us, right? Because in the long term, we are not thinking short term, we are also thinking long term. In the long term, they add decent value to our system. So when adjusting for priorities, we should account for that, and we should make sure that these criteria are also scored. Like if a guild is very tech heavy and that is something which contributes a lot of value to the X ecosystem, we should definitely ramp up the scoring for criteria which make them stay, right? So I think
then I have a question before you move on there. How, because then we go back to the situation where we need to evaluate the difference of product and someone with tech expertise. How would you evaluate someone's tech expertise?
I mean, like if I have to evaluate tech expertise, right? One, I would test out, let's say I will look at the history, right? What's their history of operating with Wax, how reliable they have been, and what are the different outages we ever had, and then what was the response to them. So I think looking at back history, that's a very good sign of getting the right data in, and then seeing who, like who are the people we would always want to have in our ecosystem, right? And then it's not like like even a guild is a team, so you don't have just 1 or 2 tech nerds running the whole stuff. You have a team, right? And team is based off different specialities. So I disagree with that there will be one guild with just one core specialization and they won't do anything else. Yeah, they may be weak in other things, but overall it's still a team. So looking at the history is how I will evaluate, and then what we have to come in terms with what are the most important goals at this point, right? Obviously, what Joseph mentioned, like to ensure we have a decent level infra up and running in place, that's the most important goal. I think most of us would agree on that. So that is something we have to always cater to, and then we have to also look what do we actually need.
Cool. Let's move over to Cass.
Okay, so I think the question was, how can you differentiate between different guilds when it comes to evaluating them based on their ability to provide the core infrastructure and their ability to create new products that are able to bring
and different type of products.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you want to compare, let's say, Atomic Hub with I don't know, something else, Wax Blocks. Well, Wax Blocks is a bad example now, but yeah, two big projects.
Yeah, so I think as far as like the infrastructure goes, I think that can be evaluated based on the same metric. But when it comes to anything other than that, it's like you can't. And any metric that you try to create for that will be gamed. You know, if you're gonna evaluate it based on qualifications, right? Oh well, this team was more qualified, or the number of people that were working on it. It's like, well, then those it's gonna be gamed, right? And I think it's a case by case situation. I think you can have some guidelines for it, but you really do have to evaluate it, each of them one at a time. And I understand that that's like, people want to know ahead of time, well, if I work really hard to create this thing, how well is this going to be perceived? Maybe the innovation that they make or the product that they make is actually extremely valuable, but maybe I don't value it. You know, maybe the OIG doesn't value it, or the Wax team doesn't value it, right? So I think the most important thing is recognizing the amount of effort that went into things, right? And just keeping it real with people. You know, if it looked like you put in a ton of effort into something, and it's like, well, look at the traction, look at like, here's all these metrics of like people using it, like for example, you know, Wax Blocks, or you could probably see you can see how many people are using that dApp, and same with like, let's say Atomic Hub, same with Alcor Exchange, or any dApp really, any tool. You can get some level of metrics to see like, well, how valuable is this for the chain? I think kind of evaluate it based on that. I think evaluate it based on its merits, as opposed, and yeah, it should 100% be separate than from the provision of technical infrastructure. It's just two different things. Yeah,
it is different, but it's this is a very difficult topic, and that's why I'm lifting it, because it will highlight thought process more than anything. Because I have a follow-up question here before I move over to Henrik. If we try to focus here on providing these tech ratings, which the OIG does, they have a bare minimum tech rating. How can you evaluate that metric in a reliable way that also highlights how they differentiate? Because if you just check, okay, they have an API up and running, they have the block producer is performing within these metrics that we have, or we are looking at that. All of this data can be gamed. Anytime you have an objective outside measurement of someone's infrastructure, that can be cheated. Anytime you have self-reported information, that can be lied or faked. How can you build an objective measurement for this? Or can you, or should you, or how should you evaluate? And I'm not sure anyone can answer this. It's just a thought game, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you could probably use a VPN, like something like a bunch of VPNs, maybe something like a small botnet to you know, periodically ping and try to get that data, you know, get it yourself, right? That way you'll know it's legit, right? Because yeah, if they know exactly where you're connecting from, then yeah, they can just feed you whatever data.
Because that's how it is. There are a few external validators right now, and to not get rate limited, they give their IP away to the guild providers, which means that they could route this as a priority to all their infrastructure. And they would look solid.
It would look pristine, yeah.
Difficult topic. I move over to Henrik.
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty much impossible problem. It's a little bit of an chicken and egg problem, because we don't always know what we're going to need next or how important each part may be. But one thing I'm like questioning right now is, why isn't the wider community somehow brought in to nominate or like highlight maybe some of the more appreciated contributions from different projects. I mean, I know that some aspects may not be as widely known about, like some only developer focused tools created by somebody, but most of them could probably like receive some sort of indicator or some some notes from the rest of the community as well, and that could also bring a lot more people into the like maybe future governance subjects here or discussions in the ecosystem.
Okay, good. Mike has a question or thought.
Yeah, it's probably not that important. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but I was just going to mention regarding the separation of guilds who provide products and guilds who provide infra and whatnot. I mean, it's not exactly the case right now, but that's kind of the case anyway. I mean, you have a minimum threshold of how much you have to earn in order to even rank in the first place. There's nobody out there who's not going to be running multiple APIs like within specifications and also ranking in the top 21. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, you have a minimum score of 125 points. I don't think there's maybe a couple who have that much in products alone. But if you remove all their infra, they're going to be basically at the absolute bottom of standby. So I don't really think it's as big of an issue as people make it out to be. And also, I know I'm going to probably piss some people off when I say this, but it's really not that time consuming or difficult to keep track of your nodes. I mean, I know there's some things like when something goes wrong, obviously it's a pain in the ass and you have to spend a day or two diving into things, but it's not like we're sitting here 24 hours a day all month long, like sitting here logged into our APIs and fixing them. Once you get things running pretty smoothly, it's really not that much maintenance to the point where like you should get $12,000 a month just to have APIs. So I don't know. I think the current structure is pretty good. And if you were to try and separate them, you'd basically have to pull money away from only the infra providers in order to free up more money to incentivize people to build projects and stuff. So either way, in my opinion, it would kind of be a wash. And I think it's important that the people who are getting inflation from block producer nodes are also, being told that you kind of have to build something that adds value to the chain on top of that. Just my 2 cents, I guess.
Do you think we are oversaturated on the public API landscape?
As far as having a whole bunch of guilds that have to offer APIs?
Yeah, full history, atomic assets APIs, light APIs, IPFS. Where are we with that?
I don't think so at all. I think we have a pretty good balance. The problem is, if that was any less saturated, then you end up with everybody relying on just a couple, which, to be fair, most people probably already are relying on just a couple. You have the popular ones, the gray mass, I guess, is the most used probably. If you were to remove the outliers and only have like really just a couple concentrated ones, the problem is if something goes wrong with one of those, then you have a serious problem with anybody trying to do anything on the chain. So it's definitely good that we have a bunch of options. And it's also not like, what are you really required to have? A testnet BP and a mainnet BP mainly. Aside from that, it's pretty much up to you what APIs you want to have. So it's not like every single block producer has a full history or,
Yeah.
I think we have enough redundancy in place where we're able to handle scaling, but not too much to the point where like there's just unnecessary nodes around.
Right. And the trend has been, I think, since the beginning of the year, a few full histories have been turned down have been scaled down to partial history nodes, requiring only the latest 6 weeks, but in return having a highly reliable and performant API, which is far more important for use of chain.
I would say so too, and I believe the reason the guidelines are structured the way they are regarding the 6 weeks is because that's what most people are requesting in the first place. And also, if something goes wrong with your Hyperion, I mean, obviously, yes, it's good to have backups, but to have a full cluster and a backup for that cluster and redundancy in place to switch things over and whatnot, for Hyperions, I mean, that's a lot of money, you know? So I don't think forcing that is really going to be beneficial to anybody.
Well, on that topic, you all can read Anders' latest report submission from his guild, because he left a lengthy note at the bottom, feedback for the OIG, outlining
Not the latest, the one before.
The one before, all right, yeah. Outlining the, in his opinion, misalignment of incentive and points for full history versus partial history solutions and stuff.
Well, it's an ongoing debate. I could probably agree with that, because that was kind of the point that I was just trying to make. The value scale between going from a partial history to a full history, and the cost scale, and in terms of the servers alone and the management of them, and the problems you're going to run into if one goes down. I mean, restarting a fresh Hyperion cluster from scratch for a full history from the beginning, it's not worth the extra 2 points, in my opinion. So yeah, I can actually agree with that.
I do too.
Michael has a question, and I always thought, and it's on this, pretty sure.
You're muted, Michael.
I'll try to keep it short in response to Mike. But there's a big difference between providing good, reliable infrastructure, running a decent server in the cloud, setting it up, making sure it's online, and being a technical infrastructure, I don't know, specialist, so to say. Because like you say, yeah, you may not sit around and have to work on your APIs that much. You don't, maybe have to worry about Hyperion as long as it's running. But when shit hits the fan, nobody's an expert in it to know. I mean, what settings should you try to troubleshoot? When you get an empty block, what do you do? What should you look at? When Hyperion blows up, who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters.
So, there's a distinct difference in what the chain requires, public APIs, reliable infrastructure, and even the expectation of, look, you guys get paid, you should do that. But part of some of the discussion is a lot of people, you're right, they don't sit around and play with their nodes all day or tweak little settings and figure out what works or go and benchmark other things just to figure out what is the current state of the situation. What can we do? Can we talk to the developers about making it better? There is a distinction between being an infrastructure provider publicly for the chain and being a guild that is an infrastructure focused shop. And it's been this weeble wobble back and forth, is heavy technical infrastructure, because hey, like everybody says, if the hamster wheel ain't spinning, all the rest of this is for naught. But if you're not providing value, if you're not building new things, that's where that focus tends to get that support. And because it's the same scale, one weighs the other the opposite way. So I just wanted to point out that, and you're right, most people aren't sitting around working on their APIs all day. But what about those people that are? How do you rate them? How important are they? How is that a product, right? Their value only gets shown whenever the dumpster is on fire. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a difficult topic, because you see the need for those nerds that do all the things that you don't see in the front when there are problems. Ben has raised his hand.
Yeah, I basically disagree with that. So we have these supposed experts who know everything and will come in when the shit hits the fan and supposedly get no points for products. Who are they? We have very smart people on the chain who provided blogs, education, tools to evaluate infrastructure. They are all very smart. Those are the people, they have products. If you know a lot, it's not that difficult to have product that you can call a product for the Wax chain that is valuable, that people can use. It's just sometimes there are people who don't want to share their knowledge and like keep this to themselves. And if you've been running a block producer for this long, especially on Wax, you learn a lot of stuff, and there's not that much of a distinction between people who do not share their ideas and who provide a lot of technical important stuff that you can call a product and that gets points.
I've literally been fighting this battle in the
but there are so many other people, when we look in the top 21, that have technical expertise and knowledge points, education and all that stuff, and services that provide infrastructure.
Like, for instance, as another example, the IBC services. I fought for months to say nobody's running them, nobody really cares, everybody loves the idea, but nobody is incentivized to focus on that kind of tech.
That's one thing, and that thing should get points.
How many examples do you want me to rattle off? Again, it doesn't have to be a discussion, I guess.
If you don't report it properly, then that's...
I was reporting it every single month. The mechanism didn't support rating it as a product. You should go back through all the reports and the conversations, but we can agree to disagree. We can have different opinions.
But that's a product. If you are the only one who runs an IBC, then
I should get points for it. And why
can we take this discussion to next week, because we want to focus on the candidates and the election
candidates.
Just saying.
Yeah, Kiefer is on point there. This discussion that just happened is the point of my question. Because how can you evaluate these things, and how can you rate these things against each other to give points that feels valuable for the team doing this work compared to what they could put their time into to increase their input to, or increase their income, so to speak.
Yes.
Cass has raised his hand, so let's jump to him.
All right, well, first of all, I want to thank Michael and Ben for giving us an insight as to the position of what being an OIG actually is. That was very enlightening. I want to say, I think an IBC node is an IBC node. That's not expected of every. That's separate. That should be a separate product, right? Is it a node? Is it a reliable low-hanging thing that is not technically because innovation, the thing about innovation is that, or just research in general, is that the 99% of the time it's a fail. You get no product out of it. You just learn something, right? Okay, that didn't work, got it, right? But a node of any kind is a rather reliable thing. I think it could be seen as maybe like a one-time points thing, you know. But then again, if it is a service that's being maintained and provided, and it does do something pretty cool, it is worth it for the chain, right? Like that, then it should get like some extra points on a regular basis, right? It is an extra thing. It's not everyone's doing it, right? So yeah, it should be treated as an extra thing. Now on the topic of, I guess, being specialized, having specialized knowledge, and wanting to use that as leverage to, you know, place yourself higher, or place your guild higher. I think that's a very difficult thing to decide, you know, right? Because everyone's specialized, everyone has specialized knowledge in something, right? So you can't, again, this is like the same thing as like the product problem, right? You can't evaluate it all based on the same metric. And if you start saying like, oh, well, I don't think you're that specialized, I don't think you know your stuff, right? That doesn't go anywhere, right? There's no possible outcome where that leads to anything good happening, right? So it's very difficult to say. Very difficult to say. Overall, though, I am starting to get a bit of a full picture as to what's happening here at the OIG. I am starting to understand a little.
It's complicated, that's for sure. It is the 3 IGs are 3 different people or entities. They don't necessarily have to be one person.
I hope. Yeah.
There are 3 different. They are all reviewing all guilds' work, and they have their own opinions, and then they talk to each other, and then they come to hopefully an agreement on how to do things and move forward. Hopefully, at least that's the idea. So one person should not be able to say this is what we do, and the other says no, and so they need to be able to present their idea and view, and basically tell everyone else how awesome that is to change something. I haven't been there, but that's how it should be. Yeah, exactly. So they are creating a guideline to review the guilds. The guilds are reporting this. So the discussion so far for the last 40 minutes or so has been on how can you rate guilds that are providing very different value and very different type of products. Michael providing an IBC node has value. How can you give that a score? And then at the same time, someone is building, like Mike D that talked before, is building this new DeFi platform. They're 2 very different things. They're both new. We don't know how they will be adopted. We don't know how they will do anything. Mike D is sitting, coding, building, testing, coding, building, testing, and everything. And Michael is running it, crashing it, getting reports, figuring out why, setting it up, providing feedback for the developers, running it again, is crashing, getting a notification in the middle of the night, everything is dead, go up, trying to fix that and everything here. Sure, he's not at the computer 24 hours per day, but he is on duty 24 hours per day to fix this, especially when he's pushing innovation. Or someone that spent their time to go through and understand where are these flaws coming, how can we polish them. So the discussion has really been, how can you evaluate these type of different value providing guilds? You have those teams that are running the bare minimum infrastructure. They are hitting all the technical evaluations, and then they put that aside, they start running. They have scripts, hopefully, telling them when something goes down. And then they work on their product. And then you have guilds running this bare minimum, and then having a second layer on top of that, and then they have this extra layer in case something goes down, and then they have this they have many different layers, and okay, how can we optimize and maximize this? We buy this new hardware, research everything, and we spend a lot of time all there. How can you differentiate and evaluate them? We have been discussing that. I don't know if anyone has more thoughts on it. We see 2 hands. Let's see who reason is first. It's Manas first.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to think objectively, right, I would answer the following questions. So I'm talking specifically about product versus specialized service, right? One, is this something we need? Let's say, are there enough customers or demand for it? Right? Even it's a specialized infrastructure, there must be some customers who would need it in the near future or the later future, and based on that, we can place a value on that. If there is a product, is there a need for it? Is there enough demand for it? Have this been an issue for the VAX? Is this our goal? If you answer these questions, second question would be, do we need all the guilds to do that? Or do we need only, let's say 2-3 guilds to do that? For example, in specialized services, like special APIs, you don't need all the guilds to provide that service, right? Like if there are not enough customers, probably 1 or 2 guilds are enough, right? So you can sort of have a slot, okay, this is something we want to incentivize, but only 2 of the guilds will be incentivized. So you guys can pick and choose who want to build this and that. When we have customers and demand later, we can onboard Quick Node and other, other like projects like this who can run a very dedicated specialized infra. Right now, even, why a lot of guilds may not be incentivized to do that is because it costs a lot of money, like Mike pointed, right? And then we don't have the incentive set right, because like VAX blockchain in general, we don't have that big of a growth to sustain all those things for all the guilds. So I think I would look at from that lens. answer the initial questions, and then decide how many guilds need to do that, and then give all the guilds equal multiple options to choose from, and then pick and choose, but limit the slots, right? Like this product only max 2 guilds can build, right? You guys can pick and choose. How do these choices came about is first the initial consensus. We'll keep the debate aside first and just reach a consensus on what are the different specialized services and products we want, like without any who will do what, right? Let's get a consensus there, and then we just slot it out, and then we let the guilds pick. That is how I would approach it.
Before I move to Henrik, I will ask a quick question here, because this is how you slot people. Let's say that in the early stage of Wax, we had one NFT standard called Simple Assets.
Yeah.
How would you evaluate someone building a new NFT standard? We already have this. We don't need to build a new one.
Okay, so
because Atomic standard is better.
So there was, I think, Colo Blocks, which was building on Simple Asset standard, right? Colo Blocks was one game, and there were 2-3 projects I saw building on that standard. So, so I don't know from the guild's perspective, from the customer's perspective, I could definitely see people complaining a lot about the RAM issue, like how to transfer. So the standard was for sure not optimized for, right? So now at that point we had 2 choices: one, develop a whole new, more scalable standard, or then upgrade the existing standard, right? I guess the choice that was made, and I don't know whether it was within the guild or in general, incentivized by the Wax team, but the choice we made was, okay, let's build a whole new standard which is more scalable, right? But if I have to look from outside lens, the problem was there, and that needed to be solved for. So we needed to incentivize that. Solutions can be different, right? It is very much possible that a simple asset standard would have evolved into a much better product. So it's just that there is no right choice to objective. There are multiple ways, and we can achieve the same goal in multiple ways. Yeah.
Henrik?
Yeah, I was pretty much agreeing with everything said again, but I'm thinking that if it's a valuable contribution to the ecosystem, and if it's outside of the normal forms or responsibilities of the guilds, wouldn't it be like a fitting incentive or something, a fitting project to add to, for example, Wax Labs? Then the recompense could come from other sides, and it can be proposed either, before it's fully developed, so not too much development time could be lost if it should turn out to be a less desired or wanted idea. Or there could also be opportunities to bring in more opinions from the ecosystem, from other. I don't know if it's only the OIGs right now handling the proposals in the Wax Labs actually, but it could be interesting if there was also some way for the community to influence which proposals they would love to see funded and which not.
Yeah, some guilds do go that route and get funds through labs as well, especially if it's something open source or product for everyone. Yeah, Janis?
I don't think I have anything to add about the Wax Labs, just I'm outlining that the OIG only gives a recommendation to the Wax team, who's ultimately having the decision on which proposals to approve or reject, right? We can only add our best opinion to if we think it's a valuable addition to the ecosystem, and that's what we are doing. But also we are interacting with the individual proposers and helping them write a good proposal that explains the idea, explains that its feasibility, argue a good price for it, and then we advise and mentor the people that take the labs route. I think that's the most important part of OIG involvement in Wax Labs.
Just to add one small line this, I think advisory role and just helping out the projects, if done right, it's a super valuable thing OIG can do for the community and all the guilds together. So I think we should not underestimate the power of what this responsibility undertakes. Yeah.
Okay, I would only object to we have the OIG giving the strategy or what we want to be built through Wax Labs, ultimately this impulse should come from the community side, right? Or from the guild side themselves. We really don't want governance on Wax to have a strategy and enforce this strategy then through vote rate. I think that's a terrible approach.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think so. Like what I was really trying to bring was, it's not a one-sided approach. Like you guys just give a recommendation and Wax has sort of a veto. It's more of a negotiating power, and then it's more negotiations and building a strong case around everyone, right? If you can go to community, teach them, educate them that this is a thing which can really benefit you. Like it's all negotiations and how we communicate the message across. We can get things done, right? Like a message is worth 1,000 stuff done. So I think communication, if done right with Wax team, negotiations, and then with the community, we can get the things done and then set the incentives right. Yeah.
Okay. Just to add that at this stage, because we've had a very nice idea how we can be more effective with producing public goods. We have discussed something like a request for proposal system, which can help us gather the feedback, funnel that feedback into a briefing, and having the guilds and developer side just openly apply to get this initiative done, implemented, whatever it takes, right? So that's how we imagine, or how I at least imagine, a more open platform enabling more briefings or proposals and also getting them implemented. We are overdue for an RFP system. That's exactly what is missing currently to really get into those concerns, feedbacks, get actionable initiatives out of it, and start aligning towards the community's needs and wishes for public goods on Wax. So, I mean, you took the same route. We know DeFi on Wax can be enhanced. We know that there are components of DeFi like lending and borrowing that we should have on Wax, right? You identify this need and you're formulating the proposal out of it. I think we can even enhance the network effect we have as community, guilds, developers, creators, all people that want to engage on governance on Wax and growing the Wax ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, apart from side, I really appreciate OIGs in like all you do. I just wanted so the pull was from my side, right? I want to be ambitious, and as an OIG, I want to be pulled from my side, and the community gets drawn into to build the project. So just that's distinction.
And I also think a committee to review those labs proposals should be consistent. Should consist of the several and diverse community parts that we have, like average users, developers, creators, guilds, and the Wax team, of course.
How could you make that happen? Because you are a candidate.
Yeah. Nothing I can promise you, but surely relentlessly I will suggest that we introduce some community voted weight into Wax Labs proposals. On the other side, even if it's only that we manage to funnel the feedback and bring that onto some GitHub issue, for example, so that it's clearly visible and digestible for the guilds and developers on Wax, what the community wants, what the community is expecting. I think that's the bare minimum we should do. This idea, but this idea can extend a lot more, mainly through the incentive that we set for the biggest pool of resources that we have, the guilds, right? What they contribute on a daily basis. So that's some sort of, when we talk about funding, something within the scope of the OIG, how the OIG can bring life into those initiatives. That's what we can do. If we can find further means and ways to get the engagement and get the funding, which we already have with Wax Labs, That's fine. Very practical approach would be we have the RFP system in place where we do the briefing, and we have different applications of developers and guilds that want to progress this initiative. That can lead to a Wax Labs proposal. So we have half of the mechanic already. We just don't have the first part. Concern or issue to briefing to proposal.
Cool. Speaking of DeFi once again, Mike has raised his hand.
Yeah, we already moved on. I don't want to drag out that topic, so I'll just leave it alone now. But I guess while I'm talking, I'll just say that it would be nice if you could go back and forth when you submit a Wax Labs proposal. I mean, I know there's the Telegram, but that's just it's come a long way since I made my first proposal. But you should really be able to, after you submit, especially if you get a negative response back, you should at the very least be able to be like, hey man, is it okay if I do X, Y, and Z? Do you like this snippet of the code? There's no communication system whatsoever.
I'm just gonna cut you here because I agree with you and we are right, but not the discussion for today. Let's take it next time. Lisa has her hand up.
A quick comment and then a question. The comment actually is to remember for next week or future weeks. I'd like to get some feedback and people can maybe think about it. If we could perhaps do sponsorships for certain types of points. For example, if we were to bring nonprofits in and need to train, IT people on how Wax works, that could be sponsored by some of the nonprofits, for example, to compensate guild members for that activity. So maybe we can think more about that. Maybe there are some mechanisms in the past that have done that, or that we could do some tests, because I'm sure there are people who would put in money to support the technical expertise and learning from that. A lot of people want to learn that. And then a separate topic, the question, I'm curious what the candidates' thoughts are about the responsibility of the OIG or guild members in terms of identifying or mitigating fraud on the chain.
Me? Sorry,
anyone.
Oh, I think everybody. Yeah. Do you want to go first, Dennis?
Yeah. In my imagination, it's pretty simple and preventively done. We can only do so much in educating people and hinting them at what is wrong and what is right to get the best out of keeping the community safe, right? But we also do actively demand a high moral codex to be part of this guild roster, which comes with different disclosures, which comes with almost KYCing yourself in front of the IGs, which comes with having a compliance written out on the website, for example. So that's only some of the details we look after. However, I think it's pretty unsolved in this whole industry how we can exclude bad actors from a space which is supposedly designed to be open and accessible to anyone. No matter how much we will try, they will try harder.
It's a very complex question. We all want to stop the fraudsters, but it's very hard to gatekeep when it's an open network, and it's a very complex question. I'm gonna move to Cass.
I think well, the real question is, well, should we do something about fraud? Is that our responsibility? Because I mean, what might be seen as fraud in one person's eyes might not be deemed as fraud someone else's, right? Some of the stuff that maybe the block producers are doing, maybe the community might think, hey, I think that's fraud. I think that project was a rug. I think you know. So it's all about perspective, and in the end of the day, it's like all of it is a legal gray area, right? So there is no absolute truths in this, and other people might want to get vindictive and feel self-righteous and point out other people's shortcomings as to like how they've carried out their projects. At the end of the day, it's like there's not much you can say about an absolute fraud. Like maybe if you sent like made a bot that sent Discord DMs and come enter this giveaway, like yeah, like that's a scam. You're defrauding people, right? But it's like it kind of depends on what your definition of fraud is, you know.
And it's not our definition of fraud; it's the law's definition, and that will differentiate in each country as well.
So if I have to answer that, I would say the best way to measure the impact of fraud is in monetary terms, right? There will be frauds where the monetary term is so large that the reputation of the chain is at question. I think that is when OIGs need to be really active. I think preemptively, if at least we should have an understanding of how do we have systems set in place with guilds where we can sort of recover from these frauds or avoid or delay these frauds. For example, EO has something called Recovery Plus. Like ETH has done hard forks like a couple of times to avoid frauds, right? So one is just, do we have check-ins in place in case large frauds happen? In case small happens, I think what OIG can do is goes to the education and awareness part. Do we have an easy guidelines for users to quickly reach out to and know what to do? Because a lot of time I've seen in like Vex Discord and Vex Telegram users asking, hey, this happened to me, and include Null or like Anders, you will be answering them, hey, you should contact the police, but there is no well-defined place anywhere they can go to, right? So they are pretty much black box, and if they can't even reach Telegram, they don't know what the hell to do. So I think like there's definitely a communication gap which OIGs can fill there. For large dollar term values, we should definitely have a practice, or at least we should know what other tools we have at hand. Like I'm not saying we should do anything about it, but at least bare minimum we should know the tools. And regarding your first comment, Lisa, I remember you brought it in one of the meetings, like roundtable meetings earlier also. I don't know what is the answer to your question, right? Like, because obviously it's two-way negotiations, but what I would hope as an OIG, if I was an OIG, was like by this time, like let's say 2 weeks, we should have started the chat, and we should have gone further into, okay, what is your idea and what is the feasibility of the idea, right? Get to know more clarity there. So as an OIG, I think that would be something I would really prompt to do, because it has been 2 weeks already. I think I remember hearing it. Yep.
Ben has his hand up again.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment on fraud. So I agree with a lot of what was said. First of all, it's going to be very difficult. Second,
it's a dangerous topic.
Yeah. Second, it's different in many countries, and what many people consider fraud is often not the case. Thirdly, scammers on a blockchain, they probably outnumber the people that sit in the WEX governance. It's very difficult to go after them, find them all, track them. There are some people on this blockchain whose hobby is it to track wallets and all that stuff. And they would sometimes be very judgmental of us not really going after I don't know what they consider fraud, but on the other hand, is like everything is very anonymous in many cases. You don't know where the people are sitting. It's not even clear what the responsibilities are. I mean, Atomic Hub for a long time did the collection blacklisting, and they blacklisted maybe thousands of collections with their team alone. They had to pay people to do these reviews, to review collections and blacklist them. And sometimes they would blacklist collections too late, or sometimes they would not verify this collection, and they got a lot of hate from the whole community for doing this job basically for free, and they still failed in some cases, and they got a lot of heat for that, for not doing the right decisions in some cases, even though objectively they did a great job by blacklisting the most obvious collections, like collections that just copy Alien World lookalike NFTs and try to sell that to the community, like, oh, here I'm selling you a legendary NFT, but it's actually just a fake. This kind of stuff that has been done by Atomic Hub for a long time. Like, I could not even imagine doing that job, running another marketplace, because we don't have the people for that. It's a big ongoing thing, and people over-report stuff, and it's very difficult, and it's probably not only on Wax. It's definitely not only on Wax. It's a thing everywhere. Like, there's a lot more money to be made on other blockchains, so there are a lot more frauds going on over there. So yeah, we're doing what we can, I would say.
Yeah, Henrik.
Yeah, I agree that education needs to be the key to help preventing a lot of the fraud. A lot of the fraud is like social engineering or simply spam to users who aren't experienced with different sorts of attacks or different fault bits, different dangers that might be in the scene. But I also think that it's indeed an almost impossible thing to entirely prevent. So instead, it could be nice if there was some sort of instructions or guidelines for how to report in or how to handle the case that you somehow get defrauded or that you suspect that you get defrauded, because in crypto it's very, very hard to say sometimes. It can also be the case that there are malicious actors who see some new project and then try to take over the project or somehow influences it in malicious ways, like simple pump and dumps that some external users or community holders of the projects may consider like the community or the project itself defrauding their holders, and that's not always the case. So it's very hard for example, Atomic Hub or any such verifying identity or some organization to entirely secure their marketplaces or their users or their projects, because any project could like essentially get rocked because they are getting blacklisted or getting some bad reputation due to the actions of other malicious actors in the space as well.
Yeah, running a service that can blacklist or say that something is a fraud or whatever can be a problem, because if you do that and they fail their business because of you and it's not true, then that's not a fun situation to be at. So doing that is hard, and it was nice that Atomic Hub did it. Let's move to Cass.
I think once you start policing, people are going to come knocking and say, well, what about them? Why aren't you policing them? Let my homie out. He didn't do anything, right? So it's a pretty slippery slope. And it's not like an absolute thing, right? It's like, well, with the new verification system, it seems a lot more reasonable. But with the previous one, I mean, it felt like you were fighting for your life to get your collection verified, you know? And I know several projects that just straight up gave up. They were like building something here, they couldn't get verified, they gave up. They're just like, yeah, we're just going to go to another chain, right? So that's pretty, you know, you don't want to see that happening. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is kind of like part of the Web3 mantra, right? Like, you fundamentally, like, technically, even like, let's say we had some sort of fraud service, right? There's someone you could go to when something bad happens, like you do with your bank. You don't like you can't actually do anything, right? You can't return that crypto. You can't return that lost those lost NFTs or that lost fungible tokens. So you don't really have the recourse that exists for modern day like fraud protection services, right? It seems kind of like obviously if someone deploys a collection that's identical, like they literally stole your art, it's like, yeah, like you can blacklist that. But I think fundamentally collections shouldn't have to go through a whitelisting process. It should be innocent until guilty. Now, until proven guilty. Now, I do think there should be something of not like a whitelist, but a curated list, you know. And Atomic Hub, I guess Wombat now could say like, well, here's our curated list. Here are projects that we know that they're pretty good, right? And leave it as just that, you know, and then anyone can submit their own curated list, look through all these projects, right? Having one global index and have it being like a hot or not system is like, I don't know. I think it's kind of wild. And I think it's like, again, it leaves the door open to people like coming in and saying like, oh, well, why did that collection instantly get approved? I've been trying so hard to get my collection whitelisted. You know, no one should be policing a platform that is based on the freedom of anyone building whatever they want, you know.
And on that topic, on chain, that's exactly how it works. Every collection, anyone can create a collection and they can do whatever they want with their collection. The Atomic asset standard is open for everyone to use, and any marketplace can list all of the ones listed in the Atomic market or build their own market contract. So it is they are not guilty of anything until that is proven, and then you have these sites, which is Atomic Hub or NFT Hive, that has their own whitelist or verified list, and that is this curated list. That's basically how those products work, and that can be hard to separate if all you see is the front-end interface for the NFTs, which is Atomic Hub or NFT Hive or NFT Blocks or all of the other ones. I just wanted to add to that as well. And I think we are about to start to wrap this up because we are moving away from OIG topics and we're going broader and broader and broader. Very interesting, but I think we are getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I will go to Ben because he's had his hand risen for a bit.
Sorry, Mike. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the whitelisting stuff. I think a lot of what the Wax community in terms of fraud expects is that we make this whole NFT affair low risk, which is not possible in my opinion. Because you kind of have low risk and high returns, what is kind of what we're here for. So you would kind of want to do a bit of that. You also have to do your own research. But the whitelisting stuff, if Atomic Hub or we didn't have whitelisting, we would see a lot of these instant copy collections that would try to get to the front page, always being the first results you see. So the whitelisting stuff is kind of important, but I agree that it should probably be a bit more easy to get whitelisted. So you don't have to jump to so many hoops. You just have to maybe kind of prove that you have an original idea and you're not copying someone, right? And then people could make their own decision. So I think that would be more ideal. The other thing is, as Anders mentioned, we have this contract, and it would probably, I've been waiting for this for a long time, and having my own marketplace that uses the Atomic Market contract. I also wanted to do this kind of, but it's hard to compete. But to create a curated market for only a specific kind of collections is something I wanted to see for a long time. But for example, I wanted to see a Funko market, which is not just a enclosed drop.io, but a Funko market that uses the blockchain and just have all the Funko collections, for example. That would be pretty cool. And yeah, it's stuff like this you could compare from whitelisting to curated to unverified, but I think unverified is very dangerous.
And what we are talking about now is products on top of the blockchain, not the blockchain layer. Well, a contract that would be on the blockchain layer, but yeah.
I mean, to be more specific about this has been raised in some of the past roundtables. We didn't really resolve it, but I think we did consent on we should have something like atomic market, but provided by the chains and controlled by yours or prods, which is represented by the guilds, right? I don't know why it has been this week. I've had a few conversations about open sourcing more of our initiatives and building public goods like really publicly with an open source and having just the chance to get collaboration for those products or those services, right? Those critical things like liquidity on chain, DEX on chain, and an NFT market on chain, we should really start aiming for a path where this has been built with the chain's resources, with the community's funds, and belongs to the chain, right? If we don't need to sacrifice security concerns or something while open sourcing stuff, that would be great.
Very difficult. People get even when code is highly proofread, they check everything, validated, audited, they check everything. They even get these the snippets of code that they can't find that is a vulnerability into the Linux core kernels or the big most used softwares and everything. Open source is a big risk, although I'm a pro open source as well.
Yeah, that vendor lock-in just doesn't make sense.
It's difficult. Cass.
I just want to say on the topic of like a marketplace contract. Marketplace contracts are actually one of the easiest smart contracts to build, right? It's as simple as basically 2 tables, right? You got a row, user asserts, assert craft, they pay for the RAM cost of the row, they deposit NFTs, another user, another user there's a notification for the transfer of tokens, and then it fulfills it, right? It's a very simple smart contract to build, but in the case of marketplaces, it's all about UI design, right? So it's like we can open source a smart contract, man, we can build it in 2 hours, it's no problem. What about the UI? Some companies, they spend millions of dollars on UI and UX design, make the process as amazing and simple as possible, right? And then this, of course, opens up another can of worms, which is that, well, not all NFTs are the same. So how can you cater to all different kinds of NFTs? If you look at OpenSea, if you see how they present their NFTs, it literally just shows just the picture and the price and some magic internet money. That's it. Right? That's it. And that's crazy, right? Because when it comes to gaming assets, you need way more than that, right? You need all kinds of stats on the NFT. It does stuff, right? And this isn't even approaching like the whole, untapped potential of like NFTs that are like, I don't know, let's say they have generative music on them. Let's say they have audio files on them. Let's say they have 3D files on them. No marketplace currently renders 3D NFTs as like the actual file, right? It's just not possible yet.
So
right?
What you're saying is if you present them and look at them in the wrong way, it's hard to evaluate what kind of value they provide with those NFTs or what they have, unless
absolutely.
You look at the right data.
And there's some NFTs that are just purely on chain, just as the binary code, right? If you're like, and so even if, so I'm just trying to say, like, even if the marketplace contract was made an open source initiative and we all work together on it, well, you can't make a UI experience, which is really what differentiates marketplaces here on Wax and on pretty much every blockchain, right? Because the technology is very simple. It's all about the user experience. And it's like, well, you can't make that work for every single type of digital asset. There's just so much natural variation. I think making sure that your assets are compatible at like a fundamental level with the most used and most popular marketplaces is important, but also like the end game is for you to do something like Larva Labs did, where they made, like the CryptoPunks, like a dedicated, like, yeah, we want you to trade our assets here using this smart contract, I think that is like the ultimate end game for all projects and all collections, because no marketplace can cater to every single to even a single project's exact needs, right, and present it in the best possible light. It's just simply not possible, right? So
yeah, it's
I mean, this question becomes relevant when there is enough market for it, right? Like if we talk about just games, if there is a big enough market on Wax, projects will come and build over, Atomic Hub standard and build a great UX for it. But if you have like 100 users, maybe $100 in volume, you won't be motivated to build that product out. Like even if it's just a UX product. Atomic Hub contracts are already open source, right? And then they are pretty well adopted. So fight even now today between NFT Hive, Atomic Hub, and NFT, it's really just the UX and the users. Like who can gain more users in UX. Specialized we don't have because we don't have enough audience for specialized things right now, right? So I guess that's where we stand in blockchain. But like that is product, I think not relevant to blockchain. On products, there will be healthy competition when, among them. Not relevant to OIG, I feel.
I think this has been good.
You're
We
muted,
have had a
Anders.
lot of I'm muted. I muted myself before when Joseph said that everyone not speaking should. I listened. I think this topic has been great. We have had a lot of good discussions. We have deviated a bit from purely OIG talk, but I think that has not been entirely a negative thing. It's actually been a beneficial thing because we have seen the candidates talk about broader things in the ecosystem, so you get to know them a bit more. It's not just about okay, this is the specific job they are gonna do. You get to see a little bit more of who they are, how they think, how they view some topics and problems and situations. It is a little bit unfair because those that are most confident to speak in front of a camera and used to that and has the best pronunciation of word or how to put out their thoughts have an advantage here. So I would like to see that all the candidates go into the governance group on Telegram because that's mainly the main chat for these kind of things. And present yourself if you haven't done it already. Just drop, this is me, this is how you contact me if you have any questions. And I recommend the candidates to actually reach out to guilds and to other big projects on Wax and talk to them and say, hey, I'm running here as a candidate for the OIG. This is what I want to do. Do you have anything that you think would be nice if this would be different? Because big projects and guilds are invested with time and money in the chain. They are also those with most votes, usually, not always. Every election, there are a few users that are anonymous. Not just guilds moving things, but you see users, you can see that they are doing NFT things and other things. They also come in and vote. They don't talk. They don't let themselves be known. They are reading the chats. They are listening to discussions. These things are important. That's what I wanted to bring as a last thing. Anyone has something that they want to add before we end this call today?
I wish we can have a conversation like today's once in a month, just around governance on Wax, getting the candidates prepared, acquiring talent for governance on Wax, right? Just getting the best out of such discussions. They need to happen more regularly. So you're all invited to join the governance group and the roundtables. Every Tuesday we're meeting, usually.
So you as an IG, will you add that focus on your agenda?
Yeah, sure. And I would love to continue hosting those roundtables regardless of my role as an IG, or the worst that will happen is me joining the guild ranks, right? But for sure I will be around. So 100% certain. Roundtables will continue.
Nice. Lisa?
I just want to say thank you because I don't think it's said enough to all of the guild members and candidates and OIGs, because what you all do is so specialized. It's so few people compared to the number of technical people in the world, right? And it's such an opportunity for individuals on the planet to have a better future. And some of that sounds, I know, a bit idealistic, but it really is true in many ways. And so as a creator on Wax, I want to say thank you for doing what you're doing. And I hope you keep doing it. And I hope we continue to get you more resources so that you thrive as you do it. Please don't go away. We need you.
I also want to add, Anders did a wonderful job as our host today. I really enjoyed it, not having to talk all the time and making things up in front of you guys. So we might see him hosting future roundtables too.
It's fun. It's a bit difficult when I want to try to get everyone heard, but it was fun. So thanks everyone for coming. I'll stop the recording now, and yeah, sweet.